Now let's talk about the EFF getting thrown out. They didn't go quietly. They were using their helmets to hit people. It was a big kind of brawl that you wouldn't expect to see in Parliament, and then they eventually got hoofed out by officers of some sort. Now we had been expecting something to happen in Parliament. Did you think it was going to get this violent?
Well, the EFF have also painted themselves into a corner politically over the course of the last 6 months or so. They have become a party of disruption, and they do use these big showpiece events to really gain the media spotlight, to gain as much attention for themselves as possible. It's almost as though there's not much else to the EFF other than their ability to grab the headlines at showpiece occasions. And on the basis of that, clearly I think something was in the offing, and one did expect some sort of protest action from them. I'm not quite sure what the EFF really accomplished for themselves last night. In fact, I don't think they accomplished that much. I think that the negativity of the entire evening, yes, it embarrassed President Zuma, and it certainly embarrassed the ANC, and it definitely embarrassed brand South Africa in the outside world. It did that. But I don't know what it did specifically for the EFF. And we've already seen emerge over the course of the last week or so major internal ructions and differences within the EFF. There are those, I think, who would have disliked the strategy used by Malema. And in fact, there were some members of Parliament who walked out, or were forced to walk out last night, who seemingly distanced themselves from the strategy of disruption. The EFF have got their own other internal problems as well, and there are question marks about the leadership even of Mr. Malema himself. So last night could very well have been perhaps the high watermark for the EFF in their very short history in Parliament, and I would expect their disunity to become much more of a focus of that political party than further disruptions, or indeed their ability to garner more votes. There's no good example to show that this kind of disruptive action from the EFF actually is getting them more popular support. And I think they themselves will have to look very deeply at this. It's going to be a rough time for them as well.
Well, I know a lot of people in the media say that this is the most exciting time in Parliament because the EFF are so unpredictable and disruptive. Well, predictable in the fact that they are disruptive and they are going to cause a scene, but it sounds like you think that it's quite ineffective for them in the long run.
Well, I haven't seen any good evidence, electoral evidence. As a political analyst, I like to see what public reaction is. I like to see whether the EFF, in fact, are starting to contest local government elections. Are they starting to take the battle to the ANC at the ballot box? Yes, they won 6.4% in the national election, but they've been unable to really build on that in the only test that we have, which are these local government by-elections that we have in South Africa on a regular basis. It's not as though they are leading up a massive new populist movement, and I'm not convinced that this kind of action actually endears them to what is essentially a fairly conservative electorate. The embarrassment of South Africa, which is perhaps one of the core features of what happened last night, might in fact backfire on a party like the EFF. We know that the ANC was embarrassed, and we know that President Zuma was deeply embarrassed last night. But that doesn't mean to say that the EFF, as an opposition party, is suddenly going to get more votes. And I think there's going to be a big difference of opinion within the EFF and within their caucus over the way forward, especially in terms of how they tackle these particular events. Do they continue being disruptive, or do they try and play more constructively and more cleverly in attacking and trying to elicit answers from President Zuma in particular?